When it gets quiet, it must be time to start, huh? Welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you for coming. We didn't know exactly how many to expect tonight, so we're kind of pointed in this direction, and so bear with us. But I want to say welcome, and thank you for coming to the 30th recipient of the Wall of Witnesses, Glenn Henry Thulen. And I'm so grateful that we can do that. I want to welcome particularly all of you on behalf of Hometown Heritage and its trustees that are here, that I'll try to introduce here in a few minutes. But I want to specifically welcome Mike and Midge Thulen. Mike is the oldest son of Glenn, and Midge, his daughter, Glenn's daughter-in-law. Son Matt was going to be here, and at the last minute had some difficulties that made it impossible for him to be here. So Midge is in the process of videoing this, as well as Doug, and so we're going to be able to show it to Matt. Another one who couldn't be here that unfortunately I wish could, and by the way, this won't tighten up, so I may have to just take the microphone out, but is Sharon Thulen. Many of you knew Sharon, and she was such an integral part of our community, as well as like a lot of spouses, she really had a lot to do with Glenn's success, you know, and we can all say that about our spouses. But, you know, many of you know that we had a coffee group that Glenn came to every day, and so did Sharon. And so when Glenn would tell stories, Sharon would say, "Now, Glenn, that's not exactly the way that worked." So she was kind of the rudder of the situation, and many of you knew them as a couple and knew Sharon even later on. So I want to say thank you to those of you who are here, and you're going to hear from others here in a little bit, which I'll introduce, but I wanted to say welcome specifically to those folks that are here. And so a little bit of background, and many of you have heard this a few times, so bear with me, but the background on this event, if you'll take a peek at the above the doorway there, is a Chinese proverb that says, "When you drink from the well, remember the well digger." And that's a little bit about all the events that we have done at Hometown Heritage and even the hotel, because it is, like we say on the plaque that you've got at the Wall of Witnesses out here, that Hebrews 12:1, which is a Bible verse that says, "So great a cloud of witnesses stand looking over us who are still here to make sure that we're taking care of the community in the way they did." The people of Perry honor the work that they did, and we stand enjoying the fruits of what they all did on our behalf. And so when we honor someone each year, it is because they have made that valuable contribution. So one of the things that when they're nominated each year, there are 3 criteria that they have to comply with. They have to be from the Perry area. Number 2, they have to have made an impact on the community. And number 3, they have to have an interesting story. So obviously, Glenn fit those bills very, very well. And in a little bit, you'll hear from Tom Lipovec, who actually nominated Glenn for this award. And we're just grateful that he was able to do that. Now, we have looked at so many of these folks who have come along, and I just like to, when we honor them, you know, because they stand as witnesses of what we've done, just to give you a little flavor of some of them. I can't go through all of them, but afterwards today, if you'll come out to the courtyard and take a look at the wall of witnesses, there are 30 people who have made valuable contributions. They all have an interesting story. Fred Mielek was someone who was the first mail carrier that we had in Perry, and for many, many years, like between 30 and 40 years, he walked 21 miles every day. Now, I think I'm pretty good if I get 10,000 or 15,000 steps in. That happens to be 45,000 steps. And he was a valuable contributor to the Methodist Church. In fact, that organ they have over there was a donation of that family. So we can go on and on. John Turner, Snick Hamlin, who started the Alley-Oop cartoon, is on the wall. Roy White, who played with Count Basie, is on the wall. Celeste Council, the lady that you can see the picture in the Spirit of Perry mural back there of the popcorn lady who for a nickel, sold popcorn every week. But it wasn't just about the popcorn. She loved to meet the kids, and the kids loved to meet her. And so she's on the wall. Betty Mae Harris taught dance for 40 years. And we have a Betty Mae Harris room in the hotel where on the wall in plexiglass are some of the dance dresses that they had. And we would have people contribute. Oh, I took dance lessons from her. I'd love to give you my dress. And so we rotate that in that room. Flora Bailey was the first librarian. For 41 years, she handled the library. And towards the end, she had trouble getting up the steps. So the staff would meet her at the base of the steps. She'd sit in a chair and they'd carry her up, in the last few years of her being there. Many of you remember Jim Hass. I mean, we all love Jim. And a great banker, great person. I'd been here a number of years when I was sitting at Rotary one day, and Jim finally told a World War II story that he had crawled out. He was on a plane that had been shot down, almost shot down over Germany, and he crawled out, had to take his parachute off, crawled out with a screwdriver to break loose one of the bombs that wouldn't break loose out of the bombardier station. And talked about how scared some of these young men were, that when they were in their briefing, the rattling of the metal chairs against the concrete, you could hear it because they were afraid, and those kinds of stories. I have to mention Jim Wallstrom. He's sitting here. Jim was the co-founder of Burr, Bike Ride to Rippey, and as you know, in the first week of February. And I kind of teased Jim because he's the only living person. You might be a little afraid to getting nominated. If Jim is proof that nominating you does not mean you're going to pass. Okay. So I can go on and on. Last year we had 170 people in this room to honor Dan Marburger. Obviously, we know what a hero Dan was, and some of the things that we've been through here in Perry. Elizabeth was going to be here tonight, but she had a conflict at the last minute, but gave me permission to say how much Dan appreciated Glenn and how they'd worked together on so many items. So I could mention, Alan Hall. I could mention the people that we've had of late. But I'd rather have you go out there and see the 30 people, including the one that we'll unveil tonight, that will be up on the wall. I want to acknowledge my staff who helps put this together, as well as our. This thing is terrible. You can't. It won't tighten, I don't think, but anyway. Candy Coffin is over here. You met her on the way in. She works together with Alex Tasler over at the Carnegie Library Museum. Marilee Bales takes care of all the finances for Hometown Heritage. And if you're here as one of our trustees, would you raise your hand? And because I'm here on behalf of the trustees and Betsy and Mayor Kavanaugh and Lindsay Pasuti is the chamber director. I'm missing somebody, I'm sure, here, but Betsy Peterson is back there. So I want to thank them for all the contributions they make to our organization. So I'm sorry to have to keep fiddling with this. So we again want to thank you for coming tonight, and I want to pay homage to our artist, and who has made most of the reliefs that you have out on Sumas Court. And that is my good friend Rick Stewart, who gets involved, loves Perry, lives in Newton. Rick is clearly one of the finest sculptors in all of Iowa, certainly maybe the Midwest. And if you've been to the Hall of Pride and you've seen the life-size sculpture of Sean Johnson or Clyde Duncan or the bust of Bernie Sagaw, I mean, I could go on and on. Rick Stewart is responsible for that, and most of the reliefs that you see up there. But he's not just a great sculptor. He is a great sculptor, but he is also a great teacher. And he'll tell you a little bit more about that, because he's taught a lot of others, and he shares his skills with other artists. So I want to introduce Rick to you and have him come up and talk a little bit about the process that he goes through.
You guys are going to be sick of seeing me come up here every year. Okay, first of all, I want to tell you that last year I had mentioned to Bill that my family stuff was, my family was, my wife was getting sicker, and both my parents were ill, and so I probably wouldn't be doing these in the future, and we needed to kind of start looking for someone else to replace. And yes, and we have two locals here that are both doing a very good job. And so anyway, that was the primary reason why I wanted to bow out, so I could take care of my family. But my wife passed away in June this year, and my mother 5 weeks before that. But Dad's still here, and he's doing fine. So we all have to go through these things. We always hate it when we lose the ones we love. And a lot of that is what this is about, is paying homage to those who have gone before us. And I'm so happy to be able to try to pass some of the skills and the techniques that I've learned over the years, and they've been freely given to me by several artists from my hometown in Newton. The Deaton brothers were the two of the best sculptors around. Neil, he worked at the Smithsonian as an artist for them for many years before doing his own, and his brother made all kinds of wonderful Pheasants Forever, that kind of stuff, wildlife work. He did beautiful work. Anyway, so I had a lot of good teachers as well, so being able to pass that on to others is like the greatest thing you can do. It's a wonderful gift to give and one to receive. So Betsy Peterson and Matt Clark are the two that were doing with making sculptures this time around, and I'm hoping they'll continue. Matt was the first one to get his finished up. I got sight. Well, I took care of the framework for it, and Betsy and I still have to finish the last bit of ours for the portraiture. This was we were going to do 3 of them and then just kind of just pick one and do it, but because I wanted, when you go to this much work to learn, it's a big thing to have completed something like that. And then, so it's important to me that I go ahead and we get a mold made and everybody gets a casting of their piece. So whether that's the particular one that's going to hang on the wall or not, it makes no difference. They are all, you couldn't go wrong with any three of them. So, okay, that being said, I guess I'm sorry, I should tell you a little bit about the process. Okay. When you look at these things and they're all finished up, it's like, well, it doesn't look like it should take that very long, but you first, and the more photographs you get, the more you can look at it, see a side view or something. The thing about a picture is you can hold it up and you oh, that's that person. You can't get around to see what that looks like on the other side. If the face is three-quarter view, you can't see it on the other side or not. You don't know if that's there or not. So that's why it's so good to have several views of this person, if you can, if you can. Sometimes it just really isn't possible, but and we have to do a lot of guesswork. But long story short, first you start out with some images, and then from the images you do a drawing of it, just a line drawing. Then you transfer that line drawing onto a board, and drawing on the board. And once that's done, then you take your clay, a handful of clay, and you start putting this on. And bear in mind, these are all relief sculptures. An example of a relief, a simple one, is a coin, right? You've all seen George Washington or Lincoln, Lincoln or whoever on the face of a coin. That's an extreme version of it, and typically up until the last 10, 15 years, they've always been a straight side view. They've recently being 15 years, they started having three-quarter views on, which is exceptional to see on a coin. And if you ever look through history of coins and stuff, you don't see that kind of thing very often. So because this is squished down, you end up taking the photograph, which is ultimately just completely flat. But when you're adding this stuff on, you're thinking about that person, looking at that photograph, seeing that head as a full three-dimensional object. And you're going to reproduce it on there, but you're going to do all of it in 3/4 of an inch. I was telling Matt and Betsy that from the back of from the piece of wood, from the face of that piece of wood to the end of his nose, no more than 3/4 of an inch. Okay. Everything else, you have to, based on the end of that nose depth, you have to squish everything else back in proportion, so that everything, when you look at it, it looks very three-dimensional, and it looks like there's a lot more depth there. And when you control how much light and dark hits an area on that, by how something is, well, I would tell them it's the difference between a fast curve and a slow curve. A fast curve is this, or a slow curve is this gentle roundness that you have here. A fast curve is that quick around here at the wrist. And how light hits those, a fast curve or a slow curve, makes your eyes understand where things are at. Okay, it helps a lot. The way to really actually get a good notion of how it's sculpted is to close one eye when you're looking at the sculpture, because you have to, when you're sculpting from a photograph, you have to do that because it takes away your three-dimensional look. Now all of a sudden you're seeing it the same way that you're looking at a photograph. A camera lens has one vantage point, unless you're doing the new visor things where it's got 3D stuff. And that's why that works, is because it's filmed from two different directions, two places. Just like your eyes, two different ones are set apart, and they gauge, and that's how you understand depth out to a certain distance, and then things kind of flatten out. So probably a little bit too. My wife used to tell me all the time, you go into the craziest amount of detail for some of this stuff. Really, do you think you need that much? So I don't. But so anyway, once you've modeled this all up, then it comes time to, you need text and you need a frame for it, so you have to figure out an idea for the frame, and then how you're going to get the text on there. This year was a new one on me. I had never done this before, but with time constraints and stuff, I thought, well, laser cutting text. And I found a gentleman right there in my own hometown that does that, and it made the life much easier, because in the past I would either hand cut all the letters out of foam, one letter at a time, sand them all down, do all the edges, taper it at a 3-degree bevel, and then stuck in place each one if it's raised. Otherwise, I was using, the old newspaper letter. You put in the thing and to make your, what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I would, you'd hand print each letter into the clay in order to get, any text on it at all. So once that was done, then then you do a frame for it, and then you calculate, how thick this is going to have to be, because it's going to be made out of different materials, and they have different stresses, and some of them will crack if you don't have them thick enough. And so anyway, you have to take all that stuff into account when you're doing it. When you're an artist for doing sculpture, you have to be part engineer, and part artist, and part designer. So anyway, once that's done, then it's time to make a mold. So you build a mold box for it, and then you pour your rubber into it. Then once that's done, then you pour a plaster on the top of that. That reinforces the rubber. You pull all that apart, and you turn it upside down, and you put a box around it again, and then you mix a new material that you're going to use for the finished product, and you pour that in, and when that is either dried, set, cured, whatever, it depends on the material you're using, then that comes out, and then once the mold has been pulled off, and you look at it and you go, okay, well, that turned out pretty good. I've got a little flaw here. There's a tiny bubble. I got to fix that. And there's this, and there's this little tiny thing. And then once that's done, then it's time to surface it, which can add pigment to it. It can be stains and varnishes and glazes, and it depends on the material. And then once that's done, of course, then it's time to seal it, make it so it's going to be good for 50 years without anybody doing anything to it. And then it amounts to just putting it on the wall, and it's all done, just like magic. So that being said, these things take a lot of time, and they are a labor of love. You're not doing it to get rich. What you're doing it for is you enjoy that process. You get lost in the notion of creating something. It's often said that to imitate something is the greatest compliment you could get. And I look at doing this kind of stuff as my imitation, my homage to the Almighty Creator, who gives us these wonderful things that we get to move and live in this world. And to be able to take these humble materials, clay, and to sort of reproduce in some fashion a likeness of somebody that's near and dear to us it's a wonderful thing. I don't know how to explain it other than to say, you are attaching to a spiritual side of yourself when you do these things, when you sculpt or paint or draw, any of that sort of thing. This sense of creation, it's it's what drives humanity. We want to make things. We love to invent. We love to to create new and different things. And so, anyway, I think I babbled long enough, Bill. So, thank you guys.
Thank you. Let's try this. Anyway, Rick, as you know, has become friends with so many of the family members and even recipient, right, Jim? That we could say that Rick has been such a friend of Perry, and we've been so grateful to have him be part of this. So this is a time when we want to ask any of you who want to, but we'll ask in a minute here, Tom and Malin to come and talk about the nomination. Tom Lippeback, as you know, is a longtime educator and athletic director, now with DMAC. And Tom has nominated Glenn over a couple of different times, although the process is that once the nomination comes in, we look at them every year, and a committee from Hometown Heritage then selects based on that. And obviously, Tom's nomination was excellent, and we thank him for it, and we want Tom to come and talk a little bit about Glenn and your relationship with him and why you nominated him.
First off, Bill and committee, thank you very much for accepting the nomination of Glenn Thulen. It's my belief that the highest honor we give annually in this community is the Wall of Witnesses. And for those of us that have been here a long time, this is coming up on, it'll soon be 50 years. I've heard of those people, and I know those people. And so, again, Mike, Midge, and your family, congratulations, a special honor. I also heard from Elizabeth Marburger today, and she shared the number of times that Dan had conversations with Coach Thulen, and especially when they talked basketball. And if you know the setup, Coach Thulen would show up and we had a chair for him along the sidelines. We had a place for him at the football games along with Mr. Davis. We brought him popcorn, but the conversation they had, and she shared how special it is that Dan's plaque will be alongside Coach Thulen's plaque. So to share a little bit about Coach Thulen and the nomination. Adopted from Mercy Hospital in Council Bluffs, Iowa at the age of 10 days. Mr. Glenn Thulen was raised in the community of Perry, becoming a proud Blue Jay graduate. He was a veteran of both World War II and the Korean conflict. Following World War II, after 3 years in the United States Navy, Mr. Thulen attended Buena Vista University for 3 years. He returned to Perry and worked for the Milwaukee Railroad. On September 3rd, 1953, his birthday, it's also my dad's birthday, September 3rd. His birthday, he enlisted in the United States Air Force, and he received the National Defense Service Medal. Following marriage to Sharon Bruce, also a Perry High School graduate, the Thulens returned to Perry, where he worked for the Milwaukee Railroad. And then in 1961, he decided to enroll again at Buena Vista, graduating in 1962 at the age of 36, and leading his team to the NAIA National Basketball Tournament. And would often laugh about how he was older than the coach. And when you see a picture, if you go up to Buena Vista University, you'll see a team picture. And there's Coach Thulen. And your first thought is, what's this older guy doing with all these young kids playing basketball? But following a career as a college basketball coach, he retired in 1988 to the Perry community. Mr. Thulen was actively involved as community leader, a self-described Perry boy, and a lifetime champion of Perry, promoting our town's strengths and seeking to fulfill our possibilities. Appropriately, his funeral service in 2014 was held in the Perry High School gymnasium. I can remember a phone call in November of that year, of 2013, saying, Tom, I don't have long to live, and I'd like to have my service in the gym. And Sharon said, if I want to have the service in the gym, I have to call and ask. So it was our privilege to host that event, that memorial. Mr. Thulen was actively involved, as we said. Mr. Thulen was a strong advocate for the town of Perry and for the students and the staff of our school district. As Mayor of Perry, Iowa for 2 terms, Mr. Thulen arranged for the design and the construction of the Perry Veterans Memorial Park, something that in recent years we renovated and we added to, and appreciate Mayor Andorf at the time with that, and Don Richardson, who's here, and the many people that helped with that. Malin came out as well. He's also instrumental in securing the Milwaukee Railroad caboose that we have right around the corner. Activities which benefited from his leadership include the Hometown Perry, Iowa Sentimental Journey, the Perry Community School District VFW Annual Veterans Day Program at Perry High School, In fact, if you want to see one of our early ones, go to YouTube, and you'll see Coach Thulen giving the main address and the annual Memorial Day community service. Coach Thulen was a recipient of numerous honors and tributes, including an office suite in the Buena Vista University Athletic Complex is named the Glenn Thulen Suite. I found that out by going to BV, and not by hearing from Coach Thulen. Coach Thulen had a very humble confidence. He knew what he was good at. He knew his strengths, but he preferred having the light shine on somebody else. If you had the occasion to be around when Mrs. Thulen was there, that was definitely the case. He would step back and let the light shine on her. Mr. Thulen holds the unique distinction of being a member of the Keene State College Hall of Fame, the BV Hall of Fame, and the Perry Activity Booster Club Hall of Fame. He was honored by the Community Leaders of America. Mr. Thulen was instrumental in the integration of the Keene State Athletic Program, bringing in the first black student athletes, at the promotion of the expansion of women's sports under Title IX. A section of the Perry High School Library, Dr. Eugene Brady Library, recognizes Glenn and Sharon Thulen for their donation of a collection of World War II books. Perry High School annually presents the Glenn Thulen Gail Davis Award to a graduating student who best exemplifies the 6 pillars of character: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. The Flanders Fields Veterans Tribute in the Performing Arts Library Center lobby that Betsy Peterson was actively involved with came about because of the generosity of the Thulen family. Glenn Thulen demonstrated a love for the community of Perry, Iowa. He leaves a lasting legacy of leadership and loyalty. Proud of the place of Perry, the place in which he was raised, the place in which he returned to live in retirement, the place in which he died and is buried, the place in which he lived life in such a way that this place is proud of him. He was one among us who has made a difference. He's forever a Perry boy. As a young Perry High School educator, I heard of the legendary Glenn Thulen. I first met Coach Thulen as a substitute teacher, and I quickly learned when Coach Thulen was going to be your substitute, tailor the lesson so he could tell stories and he could be the local historian. As a young AD, I knew him as a mentor and a man who was dedicated to this community and devoted to his family. That relationship would grow into a valued friendship, connecting with Sharon and Mike and Midge and their family and his grandkids, connecting with Gail Davis and Malin Conaway and names from the past, and a generation of Perry friends. I also heard stories of Perry history and his life story and the wisdom he gained that guided him through the years. Siroc wrote, "A faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. He who finds one finds a treasure." And Coach Thulen was a treasure. Congratulations, Mike and Midge, and to your family. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tom. We want to ask Glenn's friend and another World War II veteran, Malin Conaway, to come and talk about their relationship.
Okay. Yeah, I knew Glenn all my life, I guess. Tell you, we started kindergarten together. We went through high school. So we became friends in grade school. And we was friends all our life. It was nothing made up between the two of us. It was just, we was just good friends. And after we graduated, he went in the Navy and I went in the Army, and I guess maybe that's the reason we got the war over. I don't know. but Glenn lived in a lot of different places, but Perry was always home. It was always Mike knows that, because when he retired, he moved back here to Perry. And I tell you, when he moved back, wife and I moved to Florida. And we came home in the summertime for a couple of weeks, see Glenn. And he asked me why we moved to Florida. And I said, well, they heard you was coming back to Perry. So, I don't know that they could stand both of us, you know, but that was just part of where we lived, you know. But one thing, when he was home, about Glenn, he was mayor at that time. The Veterans Memorial was so much part of him. He so much wanted it done. He worked so hard for that. That's all I heard that time when we was home. So I know he really put his heart into that. And later when we moved back to Perry, then the four of us, we spent a lot of time together after that. So, but Glenn was good in athletics, basketball, football, whatever. Well, he went in the Navy and played baseball. But the one thing, when he was playing basketball in high school, okay, at that time, we only had one coach. He coached everything. So, Glenn is coming down the floor with the basketball, and he got double teamed. And the coach is yelling at me to pass the ball to the kid, which Glenn did. The coach had forgot that he had made a substitution. The kid was sitting on the bench, so he was following coach's orders, you know. So that's the way I remember Glenn. He's just a good friend and a good person all the way around. And he would do anything for you. Whatever he could, he would do it for you. I was so thankful that I had a friend like that all my life, okay?
Thank you, Malin. That's really special. Thank you so much. In a little bit, I'm going to ask Mike Thulen to come up and talk, but I want to give an opportunity for anyone else who has a memory of Glenn that you'd like to share with the group. Mitch?
Whoops. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm just going to share one quick story. I came into the Thulen family at the tender age of 18 and a half when I went to Keene State. Meant coach, because that's what we would call him, or GT, or later on when I found out his nickname was Stinky. But as I got to know the family and they got to know me, I had only my best friends and my family know this about me. When I get a little tired and a little goofy, I giggle. And once I start to giggle, I can't stop. And my shoulders shake, and it's quite the sight. Anyway, we're at dinner one night, Mike, myself, and Sharon and Glenn, and we were sitting in the loft of a very nice restaurant in Keene, New Hampshire, and we had just ordered dessert, and Coach looks at me, and he points to his mouth, and he had just taken a bite, I believe it was banana cream pie, and he went like this, and it spit out of his mouth, and I got completely hysterical giggling, and I couldn't stop, and Sharon is yelling at Glenn to stop acting like a 3-year-old, which made me laugh even more. My shoulders are shaking, and I leaned over the rail of the restaurant, because it was right next to me, because I didn't want to attract any more attention to myself than I already did. And people thought I was looking downstairs. So they all got up and looked over the ledge to see what I was looking at and what was wrong with me, which made me laugh even more, and he wouldn't stop spitting pie at me. So anyway, that is just such a perfect GT story, and with that, I will stop.
We all have great stories of Glenn. Anybody else want to share something? I will share with you, if no one else has come, I'll share with you I mentioned to Mike that, you know, we had coffee with Glenn, and after they came back to town, we were dear friends. But I was kind of you know, when he was going to do the caboose, or he was going to do the Veterans Memorial, or he was going to do Sentimental Journey, I mean, I was kind of the grunt guy that he needed. You know, he could garner a crowd like nobody I'd ever seen, but he also needed somebody to kind of do some of the detail work. So he'd let me tag along. So we have a lot of stories. My favorite story, however, I've got to share with you is you heard Tom talk about Gail Davis. As you know, Glenn and Gail Davis was a black man here, for those who did not know Gail. But they were dear friends from the time they were small. And so when Mrs. Amundsen and Howard came to town, we were having an event, and they invited a black man from Jackson, Mississippi by the name of John Perkins. Now, I need to tell you a little bit about John Perkins because it will help with this story. And John Perkins came to town with some of his folks from Jackson, Mississippi, but John had started what became and is today one of the largest Christian groups in the country. It's called the Christian Community Development Association, and it's now based out of Chicago. I went to a conference in Indianapolis with that group, over 1,000 people from all over the world. And so I tell you that John Perkins got this started because during the 60s, when there were civil rights things, he was involved in helping someone down in Jackson, Mississippi with, you know, just in a peaceful march for the black folks in that area, and he got arrested and put in jail. And one of the white sheriff's department people took a baton to him and beat him in jail, just, you know, unmercifully. Well, the reason I'm telling you this story is because that's how this organization started, because John Perkins told the story, and I've heard him tell it, about how his mother had always said that we needed to forgive others. And so in jail, John Perkins said, I make a choice to forgive that man. Well, I told you I went to that conference in Indianapolis. When I was there, that sheriff's deputy got up on stage, hugged John Perkins, and proceeded to talk about how John's forgiveness had brought him to the Christian faith. And so, all that being said, John Perkins is now here in Perry. And we wanted John to be able to interview Glenn and Gail Davis. So back there in the Dallas County boardroom, we sat and we brought people in around them to listen to them. And John Perkins began to ask questions of them. And the one that I remember, and I'll never forget, he looked at Glenn and he said, Glenn, did it ever bother you that your best friend was a black man in Perry? And I'll never forget Glenn's look on his face. He just kind of backed up, almost like he was shocked. And he said, I didn't know he was black. I have heard John Perkins tell that story many times. How he had to come to Perry, Iowa to find a person who didn't see any difference between the black man and the white guy. And so it's a warming story at my heart. And a lot of them are humorous, but that one is special. With that, I want to introduce Mike Thulen, who also is a Hall of Fame athlete and coach. You know, he followed in his dad's footsteps in Springfield, Massachusetts, you know, and that's where basketball found its beginning. James Naismith. And so they know Mike Thulen very, very well there. So Mike, I'd like you to come and share a little bit about your dad.
Thank you. First off, it's not lost on me, the last time I stood in this room and I was speaking, it was actually right after my father passed away. We had a life celebration here, and it was a wonderful moment. I would venture to say it's probably 130 degrees warmer now than then, because if you remember, 2014 in January, there was the polar vortex, and the planes were grounded and nobody could move, and that leads me to believe it would be a cold day in hell, et cetera, Glen Thulen, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not lost on me, and what great weather we're having, and I can't believe it. First off, thank you very much for the opportunity. I am the Thulen's son, number one, firstborn, best looking, smartest, et cetera. I'll say that. But I'm also the grandson of Henry Thulen and Dora Thulen, and the center of my universe, because I did not really know them. See, my grandfather, Henry, he died when I was in first grade. But my center of the universe was Bob and Mert Bruce, 610 South 3rd Street. And while I lived in Perry at the very start of my life, I've had snapshots here and there. We made the pilgrimage every single year of my life to come back here. And even now, at the young age of 68 years old, when I hit this town, I feel like a kid. And it's because of people like you and the community you have. So, on behalf of my brother who could not be here, he is a year younger than I, and his two sons, Joe and Sam, my two children, and hers too, by the way, Zach and Jesse. You've seen, if you're familiar with our family, you've seen them around here. We say thank you for the opportunity. I also have a great story to tell, because the reason this was rushed to get done was because our granddaughter was due at the end of October. A funny little thing happened before we left to come here. She came 4.5 weeks early. There is another Thulen in the universe. Kaylee Rose Thulen, 5 pounds, 5 ounces. She's fine. She's in the NIC unit and everything's looking very, very good. Has entered the world. So I guess we could have given you a little more time after all.
We greatly appreciate it. We didn't quite get finished. We still got the mold and the casting to do.
So at any rate, I wanted to say that publicly. I haven't gone on Facebook with this yet to let you know yet. There's an offspring of Stinky Thulen out there that's still baby. So we're very, very proud of that, and wanted to make that announcement. The next question I'd like to ask, raise your hand if you knew either one of my parents. Raise them high if you knew them. I would want to say thank you very much. No, thank you very much. Because things that I'm hearing, and the reason I wanted to go last, I view it from the prism of being the son and coming back and seeing snapshots of what's going on, and it's always family when we come in. So I wanted to hear kind of the take on things in terms of his influence, but when you say his, it's also my mom's. All right, we hear this, he was a very good basketball coach. Yes, he was a very good basketball coach, but when you compare my parents' track record in terms of athletic achievement, my mother was a much better basketball player than my father. And that's a fact. She was an all-state basketball player for Perry High School. My father, not so much. She knew a hell of a lot more about basketball than him, too. A lot more. And she would tell him that all the time. Every couple has certain personalities. So like a couple of comedians, you have the straight man, you have the joker. Well, you can guess what role she had to play. Because to the very end, he was very much a kid. A kid. So the first thing I want to do is I want to publicly acknowledge Bill Clark and all that he does for this community. How about giving him a hand? You should feel very, very grateful for him as a treasurer for this place, but also traditions like this. Not having been in Perry, not having grown up in Perry every single day, I come back and I marvel at the community things that this place still does. And we were talking about this today after my father passed. He passed on December 30th, 2013. We made it a point to come here every single Christmas to be with my mother because that would be a tough time. And that's when I discovered the Elks Christmas feed that you do every year for Christmas for this community. That just blows me away. That does not happen everywhere else. It doesn't happen. People here have such a connection and a community spirit. It's just mind-boggling. So I want to give kudos to the community because the influence you've had on my and in me personally is profound. You know, it's one thing to talk about when you're born, when you pass, you know, the years you went here, the years you went there. It isn't about the years, it's about the dash between the years. What do you do with that? What are you doing? Are you impacting other people? And that to me, I want to say thank you from a personal affectation, is that you as a community have had a great deal to do with me. And I thank you for that. But Bill has been the centerpiece of a lot of this. The hotel, the Carnegie Library, this event, you go on and on and on. He's unbelievable. And obviously my good friend Tom, we swap stories all the time with regards to athletics and its place in development for students and student athletes, and always look forward to catching up with him. And what can I say, Malin? You beat him. You beat him, you're still kicking. Now, my father would have been 100 years old with Malin. I mean, his birthday was September 3rd. And so you do have the last laugh. And he, you know, and I hope you appreciate him and what a treasure and an asset he is to this community. He really is. Well, lastly, most importantly, Rick Stewart. First off, my friend for life, Jeff Stewart. You're both Stewarts, but I can tell you one thing. He's like me. Our best artistic ability was to draw a stick man. And I'm not sure we're real good at that either. Thank you so much. I mean, I saw the renditions and everything. They look awesome. So thank you for all the great work you do. Thank you. Okay. The one thing I said to him when he asked me to describe my dad, I said, you know, in summation, I would say this. He may have left Perry, but Perry never left him. Every summer, we would come back. Every summer. And he would quickly connect with friends and with families. And I mentioned Jeff before. Jeff, I've known him my entire life. My entire life. He's known me all but 1 year. But we grew up, when I lived in Perry, we grew up together. And we used to box, I guess. He used to kick the crap out of me. He still can. But the Stewart family really is part of our family. And we used to sit and listen to your dad and my dad talk all the time. And if they could take that show on the road, they wouldn't have had to worry about working for a living because it was hilarious. But the greatest thing was when they got older, they couldn't hear each other. And they'd be yelling across the table, not because they're mad, because they couldn't hear each other. And we'd be there in stitches. But every summer, I'd come back, we'd hook up. It was like we talked yesterday. We'd just pick up and go. Whether it be at the pool, Perry Pool, be at Pat T Park, the ball fields, be at Holcomb's, having a cherry coke, reading comic books, going across the street to the movies. We just picked up every single year. Where do you find relationships like that? This is the power of this community. So, his journey is my journey. There's Perry and me too. You know, it's kind of bittersweet because my reasons for coming back to Perry now are very limited because my mom passed away a couple of years ago. I'm glad to be back here, but it's not lost on me that this is the closing curtains for us. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank this community publicly. So, if he were here, or if it was told to him that you are going to receive this award, he'd say, why in the hell would they do that for me? Because of how much they, meaning the people in the community, have done for me. I know that's what he would say. And I thought about that as an ending point of thinking, I know he would say that, but why would he say that? And so I go back, and those of you that know me, I do a lot of walking. I walk around this place, but when I walk and I think, I contemplate. When I talk to you, when I talk to Bill about this, I really tried to put my head around the fact that why would he come up with that response? And I came to this conclusion. He was orphaned. All right? Imagine not knowing who your mom and dad were for your entire life and the circumstances about why he was orphaned until the 1990s, when my mom finally was able to track the stuff down. Didn't know. How would you, I mean, he went to a family, Henry and Dora passed in 1941. It was just before Pearl Harbor. His dad was a railroader, was rarely around. And I started thinking, the reason he loves the place is because it raised him. There were teachers and coaches that believed in him. There were neighbors that kept him on the right path. And he always felt he owed them something. And I said, and the reason I know that is because we'll be in New Hampshire. When I was growing up, and any Iowa car he'd see, he'd run him down. Today, you might get shot for doing that. Back then, he'd want to know where they're at, where they're from, get the backstory. Every single time you see an Iowa license, he would do that. He was a highly successful basketball coach at the collegiate level. Yet, every time the Perry High School basketball job came open, he thought hard about coming back and coaching at Perry High School. That's how much this place meant to him. And it makes sense that way. There was no doubt that when he retired in 88, that he was coming back here because my grandma, her health was failing. And so it made sense that they come back and they take care of her. And when he got back, he got kind of talked into doing the mayor thing, which he wanted to do from a standpoint of giving back. He wanted to take in terms of honoring the people like Jeff's dad, like Malin, the veterans, the railroad, the hometown Perry that he remembered. For that certain age, he wanted to make sure that he did his best to have them recognized. Not for any personal reasons other than the fact that he felt that they should be. Because the greatest generation, as you all well know, didn't talk a whole lot about what they did or didn't do during World War II and all the stuff that they went through. But he wanted them to be honored in a way that he felt was appropriate and also be an advocate for the town of Perry. And that's why I come to the conclusion, that's what this was all about. That's what he would have said. I mean, I could tell you some funny stories, like the one Grandpa Henry, I won't tell you this, but when Grandpa Henry found out that my dad was going into the Navy, I won't tell you the fact that he was sitting in a bar having a beer with a buddy. He said, the guy was saying, you know, this war looks like it's going to go on forever. He says, no, it's going to be over in 2 days. What insight do you have on that? Well, my son just joined the Navy and he's never held a job for more than 2 days. It's over. It's over. So I won't tell you that, and I don't even remember, you know, so these are stories that come out. And so when he came back, he did all these things, and the one thing he really did was he grabbed people and pulled them together. He had like 4 separate coffee groups. 4 separate coffee groups. I guess he needed an audience for all the stories. And, you know, and if you've heard the stories, I'm not going to go through them. I couldn't do them justice anyway, because he would change it, nuance it based upon who the people were. But final analysis is this. This town meant the world to him. And he could not give back enough to you. But I really believe that was what this love story was all about. That this town raised him, He was proud of this town, he loved this town, and this is where he wanted to be. So I'm proud to be his son and be in front of you, to thank you on behalf of him. This honor is not about him, it's about you and your effect on him. That's all I have to say.
Mike, Midge, Tom, Malin, thank you for your very, very interesting comments about our dear friend, Glenn. And so we're very, very grateful. So I want to close out here by showing you a little bit of where we are on the relief. I know that Rick wants to make one little comment about it, so.
Yes. Okay, what you're going to see is an original clay model of the portrait and a wooden model of the frame. And so this is not the finished product. There's still another stage. We still have to pour the molds, cast it, and then finish and put it up. But the only difference will be the color. That's it, the material that it's actually going to have. So other than that, all set. Okay, thanks guys.
We're going to have them come do that in just a second here. But I want to say, you know, this is the 30th recipient of this award. And every year we stand before you and we ask for your help so that we can continue to do this. This year we got a grant from, it didn't cover everything, but we got a grant from Dallas County Foundation for, to help us with this event. And so we appeal to you each year to please help us. On your program tonight, you'll notice there's a little QR code. And you can go on there, make a contribution, you can send a check, give a check, whatever. If you appreciate what we do and you want to see us continue to do this, we need your help. And so I make that appeal every year, and you know, forgive me for doing it, but you know, this is how nonprofits exist. We want to invite you, after we unveil this, I'm going to ask Midge and Mike to come up and unveil it, and then you can come look at it, help yourself to the desserts and coffee, and then I also want to invite you out to Handlebar Happy Hour out in Sumas Court. Look at all the reliefs that are out there and enjoy the music and the food out there, and the great work that the people at Hotel Patty do for us. I think they're having, help me Sue, is it?
Beef burgers?
Beef burgers, okay, so help yourself to that, and it's very reasonable, $10. So Midge and Mike, come on up and let's unveil this and let people look and see what this is going to look like. So. Yeah.
Good job. Excellent. It's nice to have tall people.
Hey.
All right, it says, Glenn Thulen, a lifelong advocate for Perry, served 2 terms as mayor and was instrumental in creating many community traditions. Hall of Fame athlete, coach, and educator, Mr. Thulen dedicated his life to students, athletes, veterans in the Perry community. Bas relief, is that what it is?
Bas relief.
Bas relief portrait on the Wall of Fame witnesses. Our wall of witnesses ensures his legacy as a proud Perry boy will endure for generations to come.
Again, come on up, take a closer look, enjoy the refreshments. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you.
Really good. Yes, sir.